Have you ever heard of an HOA Karen going too far? Well, this one didn't just complain. She actually unlocked my door without permission. But what she didn't expect was what was waiting on the other side: the police. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, step by step, from the shocking moment she crossed the line, to the instant she froze when reality hit her hard. Trust me, this is one of those wild stories that will keep you glued till the end. Stick around. It's a story you're not going to want to miss. And if you enjoyed this one, be sure to click subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another special story for you. It started out like one of those painfully ordinary afternoons, where nothing really happens. The kind of day when you convince yourself you'll finally fold the laundry you've been living out of for a week. Maybe order pizza. Maybe scroll TikTok until your thumb cramps. My apartment was quiet, sun slipping lazily through the blinds, and honestly, if life were a sitcom, this would have been the calm, laugh-track-free opening scene. The only thing breaking the silence was the occasional muffled bark from my neighbor's dog and the faint hum of my fridge, which I swear is plotting against me. Now, here's the thing about living in a community with an HOA. You sign up for rules, regulations, and the occasional passive-aggressive note about your trash can being 3 inches out of alignment. What you don't sign up for is the self-appointed neighborhood sheriff enter Karen. And yes, her name is actually Karen. I wish I was making that up. But sometimes life just hands you material. Karen has this way of patrolling the property, like it's her personal kingdom. You know, the type clipboard energy, without actually carrying a clipboard. If a car parked slightly crooked, she noticed. If someone forgot to bring their recycling bin in before the sun went down, she noticed. If the grass was taller than the height of a latte foam, she noticed. Her gaze was like a motion sensor light. Step wrong, and bam, you're caught. To be fair, Karen wasn't new to the HOA complaint game. She had already reported me for overly aggressive wind chimes. Apparently they jingled too loudly during a storm, and once left me a note accusing me of harboring a suspicious plant on my balcony. Spoiler alert, it was just basil. Not exactly Breaking Bad. So when I say Karen was nosy, I mean her curiosity was like a Netflix autoplay, relentless and unasked for. That day, though, I had no idea she was plotting her most audacious move yet. From my side of the door, everything seemed perfectly normal. I was half browsing Reddit, half wondering if I had the energy to microwave leftovers, blissfully unaware that Karen was outside gearing up for her own episode of Law and Order, HOA Unit. If you've ever felt that eerie calm before a storm, you know what I mean? That little hum in the air that says, something's about to go down, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Meanwhile, Karen was probably pacing like a villain in a soap opera. I imagine she had convinced herself that she was about to uncover the crime of the century, me breaking some obscure HOA bylaw. Maybe secretly building a swimming pool in my living room, or, heaven forbid, owning a second cat without approval. Whatever heroic mission she thought she was on, it led her straight to my front door, keys in hand. Yes, she had keys. Don't ask me how, because I still don't know if she sweet-talked a locksmith, bullied the HOA board, or just pulled them out of thin air like a magician. Inside, though, I was living in that perfect, ignorant bubble. My door was locked, my mind was at ease, and my biggest concern was whether I had enough soda left for the night. If life were a movie, this was the part where ominous music would start to play. Maybe a single piano note repeating slowly, letting the audience know what I didn't. Danger was literally turning the key in my lock. It's funny how normal can flip on you in an instant. 1 minute, you're lounging in your sweatpants, laughing at memes. The next, you're starring in a real-life thriller because someone decided the rules didn't apply to them. And let's be honest, if this were streaming on Netflix, Karen would have been the character everyone fast-forwards through, until suddenly she does something so outrageous, you can't look away. So there I was, on the couch, blissfully unaware, while outside my door, Karen crossed the line from annoying neighbor to uninvited intruder. The calm was about to shatter, and neither of us could have predicted what would happen when she stepped inside. But trust me, it was the kind of twist that even Shyamalan would have been proud of. Karen had always been bold, but what she did that day, that was straight out of the villain origin story playbook. I don't know what snapped inside her brain. Maybe she got bored of rearranging her collection of HOA rulebooks. Maybe her favorite reality show was on commercial break, but she decided she wasn't going to stand outside my door and glare this time. No, she was going to act on her own authority, like she'd been sworn in as the sheriff of the cul-de-sac and had a shiny star badge to prove it. The question that still keeps me up at night is, how did she even have a key? Was there some secret HOA skeleton key passed around in smoky back rooms? Did she badger a locksmith with crocodile tears about a forgotten spare? Or was she just one of those people who somehow acquires things she shouldn't have? Like that one aunt who always finds souvenirs in hotel rooms that were definitely not free. However she got it, the important part is that she had one aunt. She was about to use it. I was in the living room, scrolling my phone in that brain-numbed state where your thumb is working harder than your brain, when I heard it. A sound so faint I almost ignored it. The tiniest metallic jiggle, like a coin rattling in a pocket. But it wasn't a coin. It was my doorknob. At first I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was imagining things. Apartments make noises. Pipes. Grown wood creaks. Neighbors slam their doors. But this sound came again, longer this time. A deliberate twist. If you've ever felt the hairs on your arms stand up before your mind even processes why, you know the exact sensation that hit me. My stomach dropped. That wasn't random. Someone was at my door. No, someone was trying to get in. I froze for a second, half expecting Ashton Kutcher to pop out yelling, "You've been punked," but no. The knob turned again, this time with confidence. My brain scrambled. Do I hide? Do I yell? Do I grab the nearest object, a half-empty soda can, and prepare to defend myself? It was one of those surreal moments where time slows, but your heart is sprinting a marathon. Then came the click, that unmistakable soul-sucking sound of a lock giving way. My locked door, opening, I swear. In that second, my brain ran through every horror movie I'd ever watched. The slow creak of the door, the way the air changes, the primal instinct screaming, "This is not supposed to happen." And there she was, Karen, marching into my apartment like she owned stock in it. Her face was set in that smug expression of someone who thinks they're about to catch you red-handed, like she was the star detective in her own episode of CSI, Homeowners Association. She held her chin high, eyes darting around as if expecting to see some grand violation taped to my walls. Maybe she thought I had built a secret nightclub in my living room, or was storing contraband garden gnomes. I didn't even move at first. I was stuck between shock and fury, trying to process the audacity of what I was witnessing. She had actually crossed the threshold. She had actually unlocked my door without permission and waltzed inside like it was a Sunday open house. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. You know that moment when you're so angry you almost laugh? Yeah, I was teetering on that edge. But here's the kicker. What Karen didn't know, what made the whole thing 10 times more surreal, was that she wasn't walking into my space alone. She was walking into a scene she could never have imagined. The police were already inside, waiting, calm, collected, like actors rehearsing their lines. Only the script hadn't included her entrance, and let me tell you, the second she crossed that line, the energy in the room shifted. Even before anyone spoke, even before Karen's brain had fully caught up to the situation, you could feel the weight of what she had done settle in the air. The calm before the storm had officially ended. The storm had just walked through the door, clutching an unauthorized key. Karen stepped into my apartment, like she'd just won the neighborhood lottery. You could see it in her stride, the smug little bounce of someone who thinks they're about to uncover scandal of the century. She had that look, the one nosy neighbors, where when they're convinced they're the hero in a community drama. I swear, if she had theme music, it would have been something dramatic and self-important, like the intro to Law and Order, HOA, Victims Unit. She didn't even glance at me at first. That's the wild part. She walked right past like I was background furniture, scanning the room with those hawk eyes, ready to pounce on a rogue plant or a forbidden rug color. I imagine she thought she'd catch me with, I don't know, a pet llama grazing in the kitchen, or a hidden rave set up under the coffee table. The audacity was Olympic level. But here's the plot twist, the kind you don't see coming even if you've binged every Shyamalan movie. Karen wasn't the only one in the room. She had no idea the police were already inside, calm as statues, waiting. It was like watching someone kick open a door expecting to find contraband, and instead walking into a board meeting of very unimpressed authority figures. I'll never forget the instant her eyes landed on the uniforms. Her entire body language snapped like a rubber band. That smug tilt of her chin, gone. Her confident little march, frozen mid-step. Her face dropped so fast, I thought gravity had done overtime. You know that moment when Wile E. Coyote realizes he's run off the cliff and is just standing on air before plummeting? That was Karen. The silence that followed was delicious. Heavy, but not empty. The kind of silence where the walls themselves seemed to hold their breath. The police didn't even speak right away. They didn't have to. Just their presence was enough. Their calm eyes followed her every twitch, and the weight of what she'd done started pressing down like a lead blanket. Karen stammered. For once, she didn't have a rehearsed HOA regulation to spit out. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish out of water trying to explain itself. She glanced at me, then back at the officers, her face pale and twitchy, like she'd just realized the stage she thought she was owning wasn't hers at all, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. After all the times she'd lectured, scolded, and nitpicked over things as ridiculous as wind chime volume. Watching her caught red-handed in her own little power trip was pure poetic justice. I didn't even need to say a word. My silence was louder than any gotcha I could have thrown her way. She tried, though. Karen being Karen, she attempted to salvage some control. I was just checking. She started, her voice cracking like a teenager caught sneaking back home after curfew. But the officers didn't move, didn't flinch. One raised an eyebrow, and that was enough to make her choke on her own excuse. She folded back into herself, shoulders slumping, eyes darting for an exit that no longer existed. You know those moments where the villain suddenly realizes they're not in charge of the story anymore. That was this. Karen had walked into my space with the energy of a conquering general, but now she was shrinking, until she looked like nothing. More than a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar, except in this case, the cookie jar was my locked apartment, and the punishment was going to be a whole lot more than just no dessert tonight. I watched her freeze in place, her knuckles tightening around the illegal key, like maybe, if she squeezed hard enough, reality would shift, and she could rewind the last 30 seconds. But there's no rewind in real life. She had crossed the line, and now, she was standing in the middle of a room full of people who were about to make sure she faced the music. It was the moment the power shifted. The story, she thought she was directing, slipped right out of her hands. And trust me, the best part was still to come. The second Karen froze in my living room, the silence broke like a cracked windshield. One of the officers stepped forward, his voice calm but firm, the kind of tone that makes you sit up straighter, even if you've done nothing wrong. "Ma'am," he said, "what exactly are you doing in here?" Karen blinked, her mouth flapping, like she was about to release a full PowerPoint presentation, but suddenly realized she left the slides at home. I was just checking. That was her opener. Checking. Like my apartment was a fire alarm battery, or an overdue library book. The officer didn't even have to try. His eyebrows did the heavy lifting. Checking what? This isn't your residence." His words hung in the air like a neon sign flashing, "You're in trouble." Karen's bravado cracked. She puffed herself up, desperate to cling to the scraps of authority she thought she had. "I'm on the HOA board," she announced, as though that was her superhero badge. "I have a responsibility to make sure residents follow the rules." I almost laughed. Imagine walking into someone's locked home, uninvited, and then flexing about HOA bylaws, like they're the Constitution. But I didn't laugh. I stayed quiet, enjoying the scene unraveling like the season finale of a show you've been hate-watching. The officer tilted his head, unimpressed. "Ma'am, being on the HOA doesn't give you the right to enter someone else's home without permission." The words landed like a gavel. Karen's face flushed pink, then pale, then pink again, like a malfunctioning traffic light. She tried again. "Well, I had reason to believe," she sputtered, searching for something, anything, to justify herself. There were complaints, possible violations. I thought he might be. Her voice trailed off, because what was she going to say? Then she suspected me of harboring a rogue basil plant again. That my curtains were illegal shades of beige. Every excuse she reached for crumbled before it even left her lips. The other officer stepped in, his voice a notch sharper. "So you obtained a key to this residence and let yourself in, without notice, without consent, and without a warrant." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The precision of the words cut sharper than yelling ever could. Karen's eyes darted between them, then flicked to me, as if I might step in to save her from the mess she'd created. But why would I? This was the moment every harassed neighbor secretly dreams about, the HOA enforcer finally caught red-handed. I leaned back, folded my arms, and let the show play out. Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't mean any harm," she muttered, the fire gone from her voice. "That's the thing about people like Karen. They thrive on intimidation. But once the tables turn, the bark shrinks to a whimper." The officers exchanged a look, and I could practically hear the unspoken agreement. This wasn't a slap on the wrist situation. This was trespassing, plain and simple. One officer pulled out a notepad, the kind you see in crime dramas right before someone's day goes downhill. "We're going to need to take a formal statement," he said, "and you're going to have to explain how you came into possession of that key." Karen's hand tightened around the key like it was her last lifeline. She opened her mouth, again, but nothing came out, just silence. You could see the wheels in her head turning, desperate for an escape hatch that didn't exist. Meanwhile, I felt this rush of vindication. For once, the narrative wasn't hers. It wasn't about me, defending why my blinds were half an inch lower than regulation. It wasn't about her lecturing me for imaginary crimes. This was about her standing in my apartment, caught with no justification, facing the people who actually had authority. The tension was thick, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't on me. The spotlight had shifted, and Karen couldn't handle the heat. Her little empire of HOA control had collapsed in one reckless move, and the police weren't letting her off the hook as they led her toward the door for further questioning. I caught her eye. For once, she didn't glare. She didn't sneer. She looked small, and in that moment, I realized she wasn't just Karen the HOA tyrant anymore. She was Karen the intruder. Karen the one who went too far. And the law was on my side. It felt like justice, pure and simple. When the door finally closed behind Karen and the officers, the silence that filled my apartment was almost sweet. For the first time in months, maybe years. It wasn't the silence of waiting for the next passive-aggressive knock, or the next neatly folded note tucked under my mat. It was the silence of relief, of justice catching up, and believe me, I savored it like the last bite of cheesecake you don't have to share. Karen didn't get hauled off in handcuffs that night, though. I'll admit part of me wanted the dramatic, perp walk moment. What she did get was something, arguably worse for someone like her. Accountability. Trespassing isn't a little slap-and-arrest infraction. You can brush off with a fake apology and a tray of store-bought cookies. It's serious. The officers made sure she understood that as they escorted her outside, taking her statement with all the patience of people who knew they'd be filing a very unflattering report later. Word spread through the community faster than free Wi-Fi. By the next morning, everyone knew what had gone down. Neighbors who'd once whispered about Karen's endless surveillance started talking openly, relief in their voices like someone had finally unplugged a buzzing light bulb. I even got a couple of nods in the hallway, the kind that said, "We heard what happened? Good for you." Some people acted shocked, like they couldn't believe she would actually unlock someone's door and waltz in. But those of us who had been on the receiving end of her self-appointed authority weren't surprised. The only surprise was that it took this long for her to get caught. The HOA board held an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but word trickled back anyway. Apparently, Karen tried one last time to spin the story, claiming she was protecting the community, that she was misunderstood, that she was only doing her duty. But when you're the one caught standing in someone else's apartment with a key you weren't supposed to have, your credibility evaporates faster than spilled soda on a summer sidewalk. The board stripped her of her position. No more late-night patrols. No more emails about curtain colors. No more official notes taped to doors. Karen's reign was over. As for me, I learned something that day that goes beyond Karen, or the HOA, or even locked doors. Boundaries matter. Not just the kind you put up with fences or deadbolts, but the invisible ones, the respect you owe other people's space, their privacy, their right to live without someone hovering like Big Brother, with a perm. When those boundaries get crossed, there have to be consequences. Otherwise, people like Karen keep pushing, convinced they're untouchable. The irony is, she thought she was holding me accountable. Instead, she held up a mirror to herself. All those rules she loved to quote, all those standards she claimed to enforce, none of it mattered once she broke the most basic rule of all. You don't invade someone's home. That's not neighborly. That's not leadership. That's just wrong. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter, quieter. Not the eerie quiet of waiting for her next move, but the peaceful quiet of knowing she couldn't touch us anymore. I even hung my wind chimes back out, and when they jingled in the breeze, I smiled. Justice had a soundtrack, and it sounded a lot like freedom. So Hoakaren learned the hard way that no one, not even the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, is above the law. And I walked away with a story that still feels like a movie whenever I tell it. But trust me, if you thought this was wild, wait until you hear what happened next time, because in this neighborhood, the drama never really ends.